Hey chess friends, National Master James Canty III here with Chess.com, and today I'm going to give you 4 tips to improving your chess openings today. Now I made this video with beginners in mind, so if you're more of an experienced player, it's always good to refresh your memory on opening principles. Now let's get into today. My first tip when playing the opening is to control the center of the board. Now, what do I mean by the center of the board? I'm talking about 4 special squares. Let's look at them. E4, D4, E5, and D5. Very important. The whole game revolves around the center of the board here, and you want to make sure you put your pieces in the center of the board. Let's take a look. Let's say we play a move like knight to f3, and black may be responding with the d5, putting a pawn in the center of the board here, but it's very nice to have our pieces here. If we put a knight in the center, check this out, guys. Look at how many squares we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares from the center of the board. That's why it's very important to put it in the center. It gives you options, flexibility, and it's a very strong piece in the center of the board. All of your pieces will be like that. Now let's actually check and see what happens if we put it on the edge of the board. This is a big beginner mistake that many players do actually. And the problem here is that they have a saying, the knight on the rim is grim. And it's not good to be able to do that because we're cutting our squares off by half. Literally 4 squares are gone from our knight because we moved it to the edge of the board. And this is why it's not good. Let's say we put it on maybe G5. G5 still cuts off some squares from our knight. It was having 8 squares, now having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares here when it gets closer to the edge of the board. And this is why you want to put your knights and your pieces in the center of the board. And now let's take a look at some pawn moves that help you control the center of the board. Here we go. E4, great move by white here, putting a pawn in the center of the board here, one of the 4 squares in the center. We place our pawn on E4. And black plays a very strange move, which is H5 or even A5. These are very strange moves. Now, let me ask you a question. Does this move actually do anything for the center? Well, the answer there is absolutely not. It doesn't do anything for the center here. So we're going to put our second pawn, the D pawn, in the center of the board as we now have full control over the center. So you see the E pawn actually has influence in controlling the D5 square. Same with the D4 pawn, having control and influence over the E5 square. And we have pawns on the E and D squares, E4 and D4 squares, having the entire center to ourselves here. Now, if you are a beginner, it's very great to start putting your pawns in the center by starting with either the E pawn or the D pawn. And hopefully, in a perfect world, you would have both of them, but it's good to push one or the other one. Now, we're going to move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is very important here because, of course, even a lot of intermediate players forget to do this. And that's a great thing because if they forget it, that means you'll be able to beat them. So tip number 2 is actually development of your pieces. One of your main goals of the opening is to get your guys out so they can make a difference. That's called development. What actually is development? Well, development is getting the guys off the back rank, getting them off of the 1st or the 8th rank. All of them. Maybe the rooks can stay there on the 8th or the 1st rank for a while, but you definitely have to get the knights, the bishop, the queens. Of course, the king is going to stay safe in castle somewhere, which we'll talk about later. But here, you have to make sure you get the pieces off the back rank. And that's what development is. So if you ever hear the term develop or development, that means you should put your pieces on the best squares and getting them off the back rank. So the best thing for you to do is to try to develop your pieces in a way that your whole army has open lines and diagonals to help you control the center. Let's take a look at that. Here it is. We have a E4 and knight F6. So of course developing, but also attacking the pawn type, kind of a strange move, but we're going to keep moving. D4 here, and then knight to G8. Knight's just going back, and then knight to F3. We're going to just develop our pieces, guys, and we're going to play knight to C3, defending this pawn this time. And this knight's just moving back and forth. Very strange, but you guys will see it in your own games, believe it or not. Knight to G8 and bishop to C4 here. As you see, look at the bishop and the knights and the pawns all influencing the center. This is what they call sometimes the perfect position in a way, as we're going to develop our next piece to F4. Look at the bishop here, developing, attacking the center, helping the knights and the pawns all harmoniously as the team is all working together to control the center. Very nice diagonals for the bishops here. The knights are helping in short range here. The pawns are helping. Look at all the arrows harmoniously working together like this. Knight to G8 and then queen to E2. Why moving our queen? Well, you do want to move your queen off of the back rank to connect the rooks. If you can connect the rooks, then you have completed your development. So after knight to F6, there's a castle by white. Now the rooks are talking to each other. They can see each other. They're definitely happy rooks here, and they're connected. After knight to g1, now we want to centralize all of our pieces, every single one. Everything revolves around the center. And after rook a to d1, knight to f6, and rook h to e1, we have reached our dream position in a way here. The pieces are all developed. They're not blocking each other, and everything is working harmoniously together, guys. And this is development and what you should strive for in your own games. Tip number 3 is about king safety, keeping the king safe. And this is why we should castle our king or worry about our king safety more than anything else. Even if you follow the first 2 steps of controlling the center and developing our pieces, if you get checkmated, it doesn't really matter. So you do have to make sure that your king safety is 100% important. There's 2 sides we can castle to, king side or queen side. It does depend on what kind of position you're going for or how fast you actually develop your pieces. But let's see what happens here. After d takes c3, a6, very strange move. Not doing anything for the center, not worrying about king safety, but nevertheless, we still have chess to play. Bishop to f4, we're developing a piece, putting it in the center. Of course, we don't want to go here, but we are developing a piece. h6, which is a very another strange move here. Then we get our queen off of the back rank, preparing to castle queenside. And after b6, there's a bishop to d3 move here. So it's a very nice move. It actually does a lot with this diagonal. And we can actually castle to both sides of the board here, which is very flexible. And we can go either way here. It's pretty nice depending on what kind of position you have. But let's see what black does. Rook a7, kind of a very, very, very weird move here. You should be developing your pieces as usual and get castled. But white says, hey, I'm going to castle queenside. I have an extra pawn over here that can help me with my defense, and my rooks are now going to centralize where the king is, in the center of the board. King safety is very important, and you should never keep your king in the center before doing other operations. This is why you should develop your pieces. And if we look at black's pieces, we haven't done much development at all besides the rook on a7. It does almost the same thing as the rook on a8. So we really didn't do anything here. Now after castle's queenside, black can play a move like maybe rook to g8, which is another bad move here. But this, now we're going to take advantage of it because we have castled. White has developed the pieces here, and now we're going to make a nice move. Not only do we put our pieces in the center of the board, just like we looked at before with our perfect position, and putting the pieces and centralizing them in the center of the board, this rook is now checking the king, asking him, what are you going to do now? Are you going to play something like bishop e7 or bishop e6? And if bishop to e6, then we have knight to d4, attacking the bishop once again. And black is under fire already. This is not the position you're looking for at all. The king is very unsafe, and the rook is at a moment's notice going to crash through in this position, and checkmate is almost imminent. Tip number 4 is to prevent our opponent from doing steps 1 through 3, and that would be stopping them from controlling the center, stopping them from developing, and also trying to stop them from castling in a timely manner. Let's actually take a look at an example here. We have e4 and g6. So e4 being a strong move here, putting a pawn in the center as we've seen before, and black playing sort of an off-center move. Now let's see what happens. We play d4. He's going to give us the entire center. We're going to take the entire center here. e4 and d4, as we've seen before, pawns are looking great on these squares and controlling the other ones right in front of them. Pretty nice. Now, after that, we have knight to f6, attacking our e4 pawn. We don't want to give him this pawn for free at all, so we're actually going to develop at the same time, defending our pawn on e4. Black now plays e6 here, says, I might put a bishop here, and just maybe, hopefully, anchor a pawn here and be able to put something in the center. White plays knight to f3, just developing to the center of the board, as we should, as this is something we know how to do already. And bishop e7, we want to prevent development, castling, and our opponent from having a big center. After bishop e7, we'll look at this very sweet and strong move here. Bishop to h6, now stopping the king from castling. You can't castle into or through check. So it won't allow me. I can't even put the king there because it's a rule that you can't castle through check. So I'm actually have to go through the check here to castle, and I can't castle when I'm in check as well. So bishop h6 cuts off the king so that I cannot castle. So black says, okay, I can't castle. We're going to do something else. b6 to try to develop on the other side of the board. And white says bishop to c4, stopping d5 just a little bit more. Still can be played, but probably not the best move. After bishop to c4, knight to c6, we're just going to keep developing our pieces, says black. White says queen to e2, as we have moved our minor pieces first, the knights and the bishops. Then we're going to move our queen as we should. We shouldn't be moving our queen out early as we learned before. And after queen e2, there's bishop to b7. as black is trying to catch up and try to castle maybe queenside, because I can't go kingside because we've prevented him from doing so. After bishop to b7, there's castles queenside. We also just as well could have castled kingside as well, but castle queenside is very nice in this position. And black plays a6, just trying to figure out what to do, making more moves here. Maybe a move like b5 could happen. And after a6, it's time to open up the position for us because we are now developed. We want to stop d5 from ever happening, and we want to take full control over the center and really restrict white's pieces and the development. And the king, hopefully we can keep it in the center for as long as possible. Let's see what happens. d5, very strong move, attacking this knight and this pawn. And this pawn says, I've had enough of that. E takes d5, I'm going to get rid of it, but we have a backup here. E takes d5 once again, and now we've opened up this line to the king here, looking very bad. Knight goes back to b8, and we have developed a piece, and now we've undeveloped a piece as black, which is not very, very bad. We're very, very long away from castling. We're very far from castling. It's not fun to be black here. And after rook hce1, we've centralized our pieces, and there's no space for black here. We can't move anything. Black tries to make a move here and try to attack a pawn to do literally something. And we have this nice move here, d6, as this game is virtually over here, as you can't move your king, you can't move this bishop, you can't move virtually anything. And this is actually what you want to have in your own games, is preventing your opponents from developing, controlling the center, and castling. One final thought before we wrap things up. If you're a beginner and you want to get better at chess openings, there's no need to memorize opening lines like crazy. It's much better for you to understand the principles behind good openings, because that way you'll always know what to do, even if your opponent plays a weird move. So keep these 4 tips in mind, and I'm sure that you'll improve very, very fast. If you want to learn more about chess openings, click the link in the description below the video and take a lesson on Chess.com. Also, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and let me know in the comments what topic you'd like me to talk about next. I'm National Master James Canty III here with Chess.com, and I'll see you guys on the next video.